Inside Freeman Private Airfield outside Dallas, the afternoon air shimmered with heat. The hangar buzzed with frustrated murmurs as a dozen engineers circled a lifeless Gulfstream jet engine gleaming under floodlights. A red toolbox sat open like a wound. The smell of hot metal and jet fuel hung heavy. At the center of it all stood Marcus Freeman, the 50-year-old billionaire who owned the grounded jet. His sharp blue eyes flicked to his watch again. 6 hours had passed and his patience, like the engine, was running out. The lead engineer wiped a sleeve across his brow. "We've checked every relay, every valve, every line. Nothing explains the loss of power during descent." Marcus didn't respond. He only stared at the engine, the heart of his prized Gulfstream 700, a machine that had carried him across oceans and boardrooms. It had never failed him until now. He exhaled sharply, about to call it a day, when a voice rose from the far end of the hangar. "Pay my tuition fee, I will fix it." The sound cut through the noise like a clear bell. Heads turned toward the open hangar door. A young woman stood there, early 20s, brown skin shining with sweat, her jeans faded and her oversized Texas Tech hoodie clinging to her in the summer heat. Her name tag, crooked on her chest, read Maria Bennett. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then laughter broke the tension. "Who let the janitor in here?" one of the engineers muttered, shaking his head. Another chuckled. "She thinks she can fix a jet because she cleans around one." Maria didn't flinch. She stood tall, her dark eyes fixed on the grounded engine, as if the laughter didn't exist. Marcus raised his hand. "Let her talk." The engineers fell silent, surprised by his tone. Maria took a small step forward. Her voice trembled at first but grew steadier with every word. "Sir, I overheard your team mention a high-pitched whistle before power loss and unstable spool during shutdown. That's not a turbine failure. It's airflow misalignment. The core sensors are reading false data because of interference in the harness connection." The lead engineer frowned, incredulous. "That's exactly what we thought, but we checked every harness line." Maria nodded slightly. "Then you checked what you could see, not what you could hear." Marcus tilted his head. "You believe you can fix what my entire maintenance team couldn't?" Maria met his gaze without blinking. "Yes, sir. Just pay my tuition fee." For the first time in hours, Marcus smiled faintly. "Get her the gloves." The room went still. The engineers exchanged uneasy glances as one of them handed Maria a clean pair of gray gloves. She slid them on carefully, the rubber squeaking faintly against her palms. Her movements were deliberate, measured. She crouched by the intake, ran her fingertips along the seams, then pressed her ear against the metal like she was listening for a heartbeat. She adjusted the flashlight angle, examined a sensor line, and finally murmured, "There. The clamp's tight but on the wrong groove. It's creating a tiny air leak under load. And this wire," she traced it with a finger, "has a crack in the insulation. When it heats up, it sends false voltage feedback to the control unit. The system's trying to correct what isn't broken, which makes it act broken." The lead engineer's mouth fell open. "That's exactly why the readings kept looping." "Both faults mask each other," Maria said softly. "Fix one, you still fail. Fix both and you get your engine back." Marcus folded his arms. "Can you fix it?" Maria looked up at him, the corner of her mouth lifting. "Pay my tuition fee," she said again, "and I'll give you your jet back." Marcus chuckled under his breath. "Do it." The team stepped aside. The hangar seemed to hold its breath as Maria got to work. Her hands moved with instinctive grace, tightening the clamp, rewrapping the sensor line, sealing the connection. She checked the area twice, then a third time. When she stood, sweat dotted her forehead, but her eyes shone with quiet certainty. "Test it," she said simply. The engineers wheeled the engine into position. Cables clicked. Lights flashed. The control board came alive. "Ready," someone called. Marcus approached the control panel himself. "Let's see what the girl can do," he muttered. His finger pressed the ignition. A low hum filled the hangar, deepening to a rising whine. Numbers climbed across the digital display. Then suddenly, a red alarm blinked. "Shut it down," the lead engineer shouted. Maria raised her hand. "Wait." Everyone froze. "It's recalibrating," she said calmly. "I realigned the sensors. The system needs a moment to read the new baseline. Don't touch anything." Marcus watched her, intrigued by the calm certainty in her voice. Seconds stretched. Then the red light flickered once, twice, and turned green. The engine sound steadied, transforming into a perfect, smooth roar that vibrated through the floor. Silence fell again, this time in awe. The lead engineer blinked at the readings. Power stabilized, temperature normal, spool perfect. Marcus turned toward Maria slowly, amazement softening his expression. "What did you say your name was?" "Maria Bennett," she replied quietly. "I'm an engineering student. I just can't afford to finish school." Marcus said nothing for a long moment. Then, to his assistant, he murmured, "Find out everything about that girl." Maria took a step back, her chest rising and falling as the sound of the living engine filled the hangar. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to smile. She had nothing, not money, not comfort, but in that moment she had something better, proof. Proof that she belonged. Welcome to Tales of an Observer, where truth, dignity, and courage meet in the stories we can't afford to forget. Now, before we get deep into the story, I'd love to request a little favor from you. Please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and leave a comment telling me the city where you're watching from around the world. And also, please share this story with your loved ones. Now, let's get back into the story and see what unfolds. As the roar of the engine faded into a steady hum, Maria's world changed in a single afternoon. What began as a plea for tuition had become a moment that would alter her destiny. But to understand the courage behind that voice, the girl who dared to speak in a billionaire's hangar, we must go back to where her story truly began, in Kingston, Jamaica. Maria Bennett grew up in the heart of Kingston, in a narrow street where the air always smelled of mangoes, exhaust fumes, and rain-soaked earth. Her earliest memories were of her mother, Patricia Bennett, sitting under a blue umbrella at the corner market, selling fruit with a smile that hid exhaustion. Patricia's voice was gentle but firm whenever she spoke to her only child. "Knowledge is your inheritance, Maria. The world can take everything else, but not that." Maria believed her. From the time she could walk, she'd been taking apart things. Old radios, rusty fans, anything she could find. Once, at 9 years old, she fixed a neighbor's broken sewing machine with a bent hairpin and a rubber band. By the time she turned 15, people in the neighborhood brought her old blenders and fans instead of taking them to repair shops. They called her the girl who could fix air. But Kingston wasn't kind to dreamers without money. When her mother fell ill with diabetes, Maria spent her days between school and hospital visits, sketching mechanical drawings in the waiting room, the hum of ceiling fans blending with the sound of her pencil. At 19, she earned a partial scholarship to study mechanical and aerospace engineering at Texas Tech University. It was her ticket out, the proof that all the nights studying under a flickering bulb were worth it. She and her mother cried the morning she left for America, their hands clasped tightly until the airport guard gently told them to let go. The dry air hit differently from Kingston's warmth. The wide streets, endless skies, and unfamiliar silence made her homesick within days. But she adapted fast. Her accent softened in class. Her grades soared. She stayed late in the engineering labs, fascinated by engines that looked like living creatures, machines that breathed air, consumed fire, and could lift metal into the heavens. In her second year, she designed a small jet turbine model for a class project using recycled car parts. Her professor, Dr. Adams, stared at her prototype with disbelief. "You made this out of scrap?" he asked. Maria grinned. "Yes, sir. Kingston taught me not to waste anything that still works." The model earned her top marks and quiet admiration from her peers. But admiration couldn't pay rent. Her mother's health bills back home grew worse, and soon, the scholarship barely covered tuition. Maria started skipping meals, saving every cent she could send to Jamaica. She cleaned classrooms during the day and mopped hangars at night at Freeman Aviation, the private airfield near Dallas that serviced luxury jets, including Marcus Freeman's fleet. She never meant to work there long. The job was supposed to be temporary, a way to buy time until the next semester. But every night as she scrubbed oil stains from the hangar floor, she found herself staring at the engines above her, drawn to their complexity. Sometimes she'd wait until the mechanics left, then linger by the maintenance stands, tracing her finger along the cold metal panels and whispering softly, "You're beautiful, you know that?" Just misunderstood. To her, engines were like people, always breaking down for reasons deeper than what you could see on the surface. One night, a senior mechanic, Rick, caught her near a disassembled turbine. "Hey, janitor," he'd said, smirking. "Don't touch that. These are million-dollar machines, not toys." Maria stepped back quickly, heart pounding. "Yes, sir. I was just cleaning." Rick muttered something about over-curious help and walked off, leaving her cheeks burning. Still, she couldn't stop watching. She learned by listening, absorbing every conversation the engineers had, every curse word and theory they threw around when things went wrong. She began to understand their workflow, what they saw, what they missed. That's why, on that blazing afternoon when Marcus Freeman's Gulfstream 700 failed mid-inspection, she already knew half the problem before anyone said a word. She'd heard the same strange whistle days before, faint but persistent, when the jet last rolled into the bay. She even mentioned it to one of the junior techs, who laughed and told her to stick to mopping floors. So, when she heard the commotion that day, saw Marcus pacing while engineers argued, something inside her broke open. Desperation and courage collided in her chest. "If I stay silent, I lose everything," she thought. "If I speak, maybe I lose my job, but maybe I save my future." And so, she stepped forward. "Pay my tuition fee," she'd said, her voice trembling but certain. "I will fix it." That night, long after the engine came back to life and the hangar had emptied, Maria sat on the bus ride home, replaying every second in her head. The glow of the city lights flickered across her face. She couldn't decide if what she felt was triumph or fear. When she reached her small apartment, a single-room space near campus with peeling paint and a humming refrigerator, she collapsed on her bed, still wearing her work uniform. Her phone buzzed with a call from Jamaica. "Mama," she whispered, smiling tiredly into the phone. "I did something crazy today." Her mother's voice was soft, weak but warm. "Crazy good or crazy bad?" "I don't know yet," Maria laughed. "Maybe both." The next morning, she woke to a knock on her door. Bleary-eyed, she opened it to find a well-dressed woman in a navy blue suit. Her badge read Claire Rutherford, Executive Assistant, Freeman Enterprises. "Maria Bennett?" Claire asked, extending a business card. "Mr. Freeman would like to meet you at his office tomorrow morning." Maria blinked. "Mr. Freeman wants to meet me?" Claire smiled. "You fixed his jet. That tends to get a man's attention." All day, Maria's mind buzzed. Between classes and work, she couldn't focus. Her professor noticed her distracted state during lab and asked if she was all right. "I think," Maria replied slowly, "I just changed my life, and I'm not sure what comes next." That night, She ironed her one good blouse and borrowed a friend's blazer. She checked her reflection in the mirror, a little too thin, dark circles under her eyes, but her gaze was steady. Her roommate, Tasha, watched from the bed. "You sure this isn't some setup?" Maria smiled faintly. "If it is, it's the fanciest one I've ever been invited to." The next morning, she arrived at Freeman Tower in downtown Dallas. The glass building stretched into the clouds like it belonged to another world. Inside, everything gleamed: white marble floors, chrome elevators, people in tailored suits moving with purpose. Maria clutched her worn leather bag, feeling out of place but refusing to show it. At the top floor, Claire guided her into a waiting lounge. "He'll be with you shortly." Maria's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pressed them against her knees until the door opened. Marcus Freeman stepped out, dressed in a charcoal suit, his presence commanding yet calm. "So," he said, studying her for a moment, "you're the young woman who fixed my jet." "Yes, sir," Maria managed, her voice soft but clear. He motioned for her to sit. "I've been in this business for 30 years, he began, "and I've met maybe 5 people who could have caught that fault. All of them are top engineers with decades of experience." "How did you know?" Maria hesitated, then spoke truthfully. "Engines talk, sir. Most people listen for numbers. I listen for the rhythm." Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "The rhythm?" She nodded. "When something's wrong, the machine breathes differently. It's not magic, it's math and sound. I just understand it." For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then finally he smiled. "You remind me of someone. My late wife was an engineer. She used to talk like that." He leaned back in his chair, studying her closely. "You said you needed tuition money." "Yes, sir," Maria admitted, cheeks coloring. "I can't afford my final semester. I thought, if I could fix your jet maybe," he interrupted gently. "How much?" Maria blinked. "Sir, how much do you owe?" She told him. Marcus nodded once. "You'll have it by tomorrow. But on one condition." Maria's heart skipped. "Anything. You work for me after graduation. Freeman Aerospace could use someone who listens to machines the way you do." Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you." "I doubt you will," Marcus replied quietly. That night, Maria returned to her apartment in stunned silence. She sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars she could almost touch. Somewhere between exhaustion and disbelief, she whispered, "Mama, I just found my wings." Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Marcus Freeman, you start Monday. Welcome aboard." Maria smiled through tears, her reflection faint in the glass. For the first time in years, she felt the future stretching wide before her, not as an impossible dream, but as something she could finally build with her own 2 hands. The next morning, the Dallas skyline shimmered beneath the rising sun, each glass building catching fire in the light. Maria stood across the street from Freeman Tower, her heart pounding so loudly she could almost hear it echo through the concrete. The tower was taller than she'd imagined, sleek and silver, its mirrored walls reflecting the city below like a challenge. People in suits flowed through the revolving doors in a steady rhythm, every one of them looking as though they belonged there. Maria wasn't sure she did. She smoothed her borrowed blazer and glanced down at the thin folder she clutched, her resume creased at the corners from being read too many times. Her mother had called her that morning, her voice weak but proud. "You walk in there like you built the place, baby girl," Patricia had said. Maria had laughed nervously. "Mama, I barely built my rent payment." But her mother's last words before hanging up stayed with her: "Courage first, blessings later." Taking a deep breath, Maria pushed through the glass doors. Inside, Freeman Tower was a world of marble and chrome. The air smelled faintly of citrus and polished wood. Behind a curved reception desk, a woman in a navy blazer looked up and smiled. "Good morning. You must be Miss Bennett," she said. Maria nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Freeman is expecting you. Take the elevator to the 42nd floor. Claire will meet you there." As Maria stepped into the elevator, she caught her reflection in the mirror-paneled walls. Tired eyes, steady hands, and a mixture of fear and hope swirling behind her calm expression. She whispered to herself, "Just breathe, girl. Engines don't run without air." The elevator chimed, and the doors opened to a corridor lined with glass offices overlooking the Dallas skyline. The space exuded quiet wealth, abstract art, fresh orchids, the soft hum of machines that cost more than her entire education. Claire Rutherford, the same woman who'd come to her apartment the day before, greeted her with a reassuring smile. "Right on time. Mr. Freeman appreciates punctuality." Maria nodded, her throat dry. "So I've heard." Claire led her into a corner office large enough to be a studio apartment. The floor-to-ceiling windows filled the room with gold light. Marcus Freeman stood near his desk, reading from a printed document, her resume. Without looking up, he said, "Sit, Miss Bennett." Maria did, her heart pounding harder now than it had in the hangar. Marcus set the paper down and finally looked at her. His gaze was sharp, assessing. He wore a navy suit, the kind that fit perfectly because it was made for him, not bought off a rack. "So," he began, his voice calm but edged with curiosity. "You're the girl who fixed my jet." "Yes, sir." He leaned back in his chair. "You know, I've had that aircraft serviced by the best in the country. Men with decades of experience. You walk in a hoodie and jeans, and solve what they couldn't in 15 minutes. He folded his hands. "Why should I believe you didn't just get lucky?" Maria met his eyes. The fear was there, but so was pride. "Because luck doesn't check for airflow ratios, sir." Marcus raised an eyebrow. She leaned forward slightly, her voice steadier now. "You said the engine lost power during descent and the spool wouldn't stabilize. That meant two things. A false pressure reading or a leak near the compressor. Most engineers start by checking the core systems because that's where the data leads. But engines don't lie, their sound does. That whistle wasn't a turbine problem, it was an air bleed. And the sensor's voltage misread was feeding the computer false information, so it tried to fix something that wasn't broken. Once I corrected both, the rhythm came back." Marcus said nothing. His eyes stayed locked on her, unreadable. After a moment, he nodded toward a notepad on the desk. "Show me." Maria hesitated, then picked up the pen. Her hands trembled only once before they steadied. She drew the compressor section, labeling the airflow path, the faulty clamp, and the sensor's feedback loop. As she talked, her confidence grew, each line of ink a bridge between who she'd been and who she wanted to become. When she finished, Marcus studied the sketch in silence. Then, slowly, he leaned back, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. "You think in systems," he said finally. "Not steps. That's rare." Maria swallowed. "I just see patterns, sir. Machines talk. I listen." He chuckled softly, the sound breaking the tension. "That's exactly what my wife used to say." Maria blinked. "Your wife?" Marcus's gaze drifted toward the window for a moment, the sunlight catching the faint silver at his temples. "She was an aerospace engineer. Brilliant, stubborn, fearless. She died testing one of our early designs." "I'm sorry," Maria whispered. He nodded once, eyes distant. "She believed in second chances. Maybe that's why you're here." He straightened, his expression shifting back to business. "Now, let's talk about your future." Maria's heart pounded again. Marcus opened a folder on his desk. Claire gave me the numbers: your tuition balance, rent arrears, and international student fees. That's quite a burden. Maria's cheeks burned. Yes, sir. I've been managing. Just barely. He slid the folder toward her. I'll clear the balance by the end of this week. Maria froze. Sir, what? You heard me. His tone was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing engine parts, not changing her life. Your tuition, rent, everything owed to the university. Consider it handled. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. I can't accept that without. There's a condition, Marcus interrupted. She blinked away the tears. Of course, anything. You'll join Freeman Aerospace after graduation. I want you as a junior trainee in our research and maintenance division. Her mouth fell open. Me? But, sir, I'm not. He raised a hand. Don't sell yourself short, Miss Bennett. You see engines the way musicians see music. That's not something I can teach. But I can give you a stage. For a moment, Maria couldn't speak. The room blurred through tears she refused to let fall. She finally whispered, Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. Marcus smiled faintly, a rare softness in his usually guarded expression. I don't believe you will. They spoke for another half hour, about her studies, her goals, her mother back home. Marcus listened quietly, occasionally jotting notes. When she mentioned her dream of designing more efficient jet engines for developing countries, he looked genuinely impressed. You think big, he said. I think necessary, she replied. Fuel costs crush small airlines in the Caribbean. If we can cut even 10%, that's the difference between survival and shutdown. He nodded slowly. You remind me of someone who never gave up. Maria tilted her head. Your wife again? He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled faintly and stood. You'll start in 2 weeks. Claire will handle the paperwork. Maria rose as well, her knees shaking slightly. Thank you again, sir. You have no idea what this means. Oh, I think I do, Marcus said, walking her to the door. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Don't stop listening, to the machines, to people, to yourself. It's what makes you different. Maria nodded. Yes, sir. As the elevator doors closed behind her, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The city below stretched endlessly, sunlight bouncing off steel and glass, and for the first time, she felt like maybe she belonged among it. That evening, Maria sat by the window of her apartment, the acceptance letter from Freeman Aerospace glowing on her phone screen. Her mother's video call came through seconds later. Baby girl, Patricia said, smiling weakly through the screen. You look like someone who just touched the stars. Maria laughed, tears slipping down her cheeks. Maybe just the engines that reached them. Patricia nodded slowly. I told you, courage first, blessings later. Maria held up the letter. You were right, Mama. The blessings came. And somewhere in Dallas, in a quiet corner of his towering office, Marcus Freeman looked out over the skyline, a single framed photograph on his desk, his late wife, standing beside an early prototype jet, smiling in the sun. He whispered to the empty room, You'd have liked her, Claire. She reminds me of you. The hum of machinery filled the Freeman Aerospace Innovation Lab, a sound Maria had come to love. It was steady, alive, and full of purpose. The rhythmic clatter of tools, the low hiss of compressed air, and the distant whine of engines on test stands blended into a mechanical symphony. It had been 4 months since Maria Bennett started her internship, and every day since had felt like a small miracle. She arrived before sunrise, often the first one in, and stayed long after most lights went out. Her desk, a small corner space near the diagnostics bay, was piled with notebooks, circuit boards, and half-finished sketches of jet engine components. The official engineers had stopped calling her the janitor girl after the third week. By then, her redesign of a faulty diagnostic interface had cut calibration time in half. A junior tech had whispered in awe, "She did what the algorithm team couldn't do in 6 months." Marcus Freeman had noticed. Now, Maria was more than an intern. She was becoming the quiet pulse of innovation at Freeman Aerospace. On a Monday morning, Maria stood before a whiteboard, sleeves rolled up, scribbling equations as a group of young engineers watched. "So," she said, tapping the marker against the board, "if we combine thermoelectric conversion with traditional turbine output, we can recycle waste heat into supplemental energy." One of the interns frowned. "You mean like a hybrid propulsion system?" "Exactly." Maria's eyes lit up. "It won't replace the main turbine, but it can reduce fuel consumption by nearly 15%. Small planes could fly longer distances without heavier loads." The room buzzed with quiet astonishment. Behind them, a slow clap echoed. Ethan Rowe, Chief Technical Officer, stepped into the room. He was tall, sharp-featured, his expensive suit contrasting with the grease on everyone else's hands. His tone dripped with polite sarcasm. "Impressive theory, Miss Bennett. Did you come up with that during your cleaning shifts?" A few of the younger engineers looked down, uneasy. Maria's smile didn't falter. "No, sir," she replied softly. "I came up with it while working on the sensor recalibration module you approved last week." Ethan's eyes flickered for a moment, then hardened. The module that nearly delayed a delivery schedule because of unverified code? Maria straightened. The same one that increased testing efficiency by 42%. The room went still. Ethan's jaw clenched. "We'll see if your math holds up, Miss Bennett." He turned, his shoes clicking sharply against the floor. "Meeting at 10. Bring your ideas." As soon as he left, one of the interns whispered, "You just stood up to Ethan Rowe." Maria sighed, dropping the marker. "I didn't mean to stand up to anyone. I just said the truth." "Still," another said with a grin, "you've got guts." At 10 sharp, Maria entered the executive briefing room. The air was different here, crisp, cold, calculated. The long conference table gleamed under the recessed lights. Marcus sat at the head, scrolling through a tablet. Ethan occupied the opposite end, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp with something that wasn't quite professionalism. Claire, always poised, nodded as Maria entered. "You may begin, Miss Bennett." Maria's hands trembled slightly as she connected her presentation to the large display. She took a steadying breath. "Engines don't run without air," she reminded herself. "Good morning," she began. "Today, I'd like to present a concept for a hybrid propulsion system that combines turbine efficiency with thermoelectric recovery. It's still theoretical, but early simulations suggest significant fuel savings and emission reductions." Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. "Show us." Maria brought up her diagrams, each line crisp, each annotation precise. Traditional turbines waste up to 30% of energy as heat. My design channels that residual energy into an auxiliary converter using conductive alloys, cheaper, lighter, and easier to maintain than existing hybrid systems. A low murmur rippled around the table. One senior engineer raised a brow. "And what's your projected improvement margin?" Maria's voice grew stronger. 14 to 17% under optimal load conditions. Possibly more with advanced alloys. Ethan interjected smoothly. "And how do you plan to handle the thermodynamic instability? The converter could overheat at altitude." "I anticipated that," Maria replied, flipping to the next slide. "A ceramic composite layer prevents thermal feedback without compromising conductivity. We've already used similar materials in exhaust diffusers. Marcus looked impressed. That's remarkably innovative. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Innovative, yes, but untested. You're basing corporate resources on a student's simulation. We're not a science fair. The comment landed heavily. Maria's pulse quickened. Marcus's gaze cut toward Ethan. I asked for ideas, not egos, Ethan. Silence followed. Maria swallowed hard. Sir, if I may, this isn't about risk. It's about potential. You gave me a chance once when I had nothing but words. Let me prove those words can build something real. Marcus leaned back, thoughtful. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a small nod, he turned to Claire. Set up a prototype evaluation. Small-scale test first. Ethan's hand tightened around his pen. Yes, sir, Claire said briskly. Maria exhaled, relief washing over her like sunlight. Over the next few weeks, Maria poured herself into the project. She worked 14-hour days, building models, running calculations, testing materials. Her workstation became a small island of invention, blueprints taped to the wall, sticky notes filled with equations. The younger engineers began calling her Professor Bennett, half jokingly, half in awe. One afternoon, Claire passed through the lab and paused at Maria's desk. You've built quite a fan club, she said, smiling. Maria laughed softly. They're just good teammates. I couldn't do any of this alone. Claire studied her a moment longer. Marcus says you remind him of someone. I think he means his late wife. Maria blinked. She was an engineer, wasn't she? Yes. And fearless. She believed talent was only half the battle, the rest was endurance. Maria smiled faintly. Then I suppose I'll need both. But not everyone shared her optimism. Ethan Rowe watched from the mezzanine above, arms crossed. Every report Marcus read, every prototype update Claire praised, chipped away at the quiet authority he'd built over years. He had clawed his way to CTO through precision and politics, and now this 20-something intern was rewriting systems he designed. He began to dig. He requested Maria's code reviews, checked her documentation, scrutinized her data. Each time, he found nothing wrong. That only made his anger grow colder, sharper. No one rises this fast without falling, he thought grimly. Late one night, Maria sat alone in the lab. The floor was quiet except for the soft hum of servers. She video called home, smiling as her mother's face flickered onto the screen. Maria! Patricia's voice was weak but warm. You look tired, baby. Are you eating? Maria chuckled. Sometimes. But I'm okay, Mama. The project's going well. Mr. Freeman approved another test next month. That's my girl, Patricia said proudly. You always did love breaking things to see how they work. Maria's smile faltered for a second. I miss you, Mama. I'll come home soon, I promise. Her mother nodded, coughing softly. Just remember, God doesn't waste a gift. Use yours well. I will, Maria whispered. When the call ended, she sat for a long time, staring at the small mechanical prototype in front of her. The metal glowed faintly under the lab lights, like it was waiting to become something more. The following week, Marcus called another review meeting. Maria presented her latest results. Proof of concept achieved, efficiency gains confirmed by simulation. The room erupted in cautious applause. Marcus turned to Ethan. Thoughts? Ethan forced a smile. Promising, certainly. But without real-world stress testing, it's still theory. Then we'll test it, Marcus replied simply, on the hybrid demonstrator next quarter. The decision was final. Maria's concept would move from simulation to reality. As the team filed out, Ethan lingered behind, eyes narrowing. He waited until Maria passed him in the hallway. Congratulations, Miss Bennett, he said smoothly. "Enjoy your spotlight while it lasts." Maria hesitated, unsure if it was a compliment or a warning. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly, then walked on. When she was gone, Ethan's polite mask fell away, replaced by something darker. "Let's see how perfect your little system really is." That night, Maria stayed late again, unaware that upstairs, someone else was already writing the first lines of her next test, the one she never saw coming. The morning of the demonstration dawned crisp and cloudless over the Freeman Aerospace Research and Development Facility. The airfield beyond shimmered in the Texas sun, but inside the main testing hangar, the atmosphere was tense. Engineers hurried between consoles, technicians carried cables and calibration tools, and investors in sleek suits clustered near the observation deck, murmuring with polite anticipation. Maria Bennett stood near the central console, reviewing the diagnostic data for the last time. Her heart raced, not from nerves, but from the weight of what this day meant. Months of sleepless nights, simulations, recalibrations, and late calls to her mother had all led to this, the public debut of her hybrid propulsion design, now officially named the Freeman EcoDrive. Claire, clipboard in hand, smiled as she approached. "How are we feeling, Miss Bennett?" Maria exhaled, steady but serious. "Nervous, but ready." Marcus Freeman, standing a few feet away in his tailored charcoal suit, gave her a rare nod of encouragement. "This engine will either change aviation or bankrupt me," he said dryly. "Let's make sure it's the first one." The crowd laughed. Maria smiled, even as her pulse quickened. "Yes, sir," she replied softly. From the control deck above, Ethan Rowe watched her. His expression was calm, even friendly, but inside, resentment burned. Every investor's glance toward Maria felt like a personal insult. Every compliment Marcus directed her way was another reminder that his place, his authority, was being quietly eclipsed by a young intern who didn't even belong in the room a year ago. He adjusted his tie, leaned over the console, and slipped in a small data stick. It was quick, seamless, one line of altered code in the calibration file, an offset of less than 2 degrees in the thermal stability index. Subtle enough to look like human error, catastrophic enough to cause failure under full load. He deleted the trace, pocketed the stick, and smiled faintly to himself. "Let's see you fix this one, prodigy." The hangar filled with anticipation as the countdown began. Cameras rolled. Reporters whispered to each other about the miracle intern from Jamaica. The EcoDrive prototype, a sleek silver engine with blue-tinged alloy panels, sat mounted on the test rig, humming faintly as power systems came online. Marcus turned toward the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we're unveiling a new era in sustainable flight. Our prototype reduces fuel consumption by over 15% while maintaining thrust efficiency. The concept originated right here, from one of our youngest engineers, Miss Maria Bennett." Applause rippled through the hangar. Maria felt her cheeks flush as she stepped forward. She wasn't used to spotlights. She preferred the hum of machines to the weight of attention. But when Marcus gestured for her to begin, she nodded and took her place at the console. "EcoDrive ready for ignition sequence," she announced. "Phase 1 test commencing." "Proceed," Marcus said. The engine roared to life, a deep, smooth sound that reverberated through the metal walls. Numbers climbed across the digital displays, temperature, torque, pressure, all within perfect limits. Investors leaned forward, impressed. "Phase 2, load increased to 60%, Maria said. The hum deepened. The digital readouts pulsed. Everything still looked good. She allowed herself to breathe. Then, suddenly, a red warning icon flashed across the screen. "Alert! Temperature rise, compressor core unstable." A technician's voice cracked through the comms. "Temperature spiking, 200 degrees above projection." The engine's pitch rose sharply, a screeching metallic whine cutting through the hangar. The crowd flinched. Technicians rushed to their stations. "Shut it down," someone shouted. Maria froze for a split second, her eyes darting across the data stream. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, but the pattern was too precise. The misread wasn't random, it was engineered. She recognized the shift in calibration signature, the kind of fault no natural malfunction could create. "Wait," she said firmly. "Don't shut it down. That's not a core failure. It's a calibration override." Ethan's voice boomed from the upper deck. "Bennett, step away from the console." "That's an order." Marcus turned sharply. "Ethan, let her speak." Maria's fingers flew across the keyboard. "If we shut it down now, the pressure imbalance could damage the converter chamber. I can fix this." Investors murmured nervously. The engine screamed louder, a furious mechanical howl. The warning lights flashed crimson. Security edged closer, ready to evacuate the guests. "Maria!" Claire shouted. "It's overheating." Maria didn't look up. Her voice was calm but urgent. "The data was altered. Someone shifted the tolerance parameters. I'm correcting it manually." "Do you even have clearance?" Ethan snapped. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. "She has mine." That was all Maria needed. Her hands blurred across the keys, typing rapid commands, overriding automated failsafes. She opened the raw control code, rewrote the feedback loop, and adjusted the thermal coefficients by hand, something no automated system could do mid-run. "Come on," she whispered. "Talk to me." The engine sputtered, its scream lowering to a desperate growl. The lights flickered. For a terrifying moment, everyone thought it would explode. Then, silence. The warning light turned amber, then green. The eco-drive roared again, this time smooth, steady, flawless. The crowd erupted in applause. The reporters jumped to their feet, shouting questions. Claire's hands flew to her mouth in disbelief. Marcus stared at the engine, his jaw set, equal parts awe and fury. Maria stepped back, shaking, her hands covered in sweat. Her heart was pounding, but her voice stayed steady as she turned to Marcus. "Stable at 98%. No core damage." Marcus nodded slowly. "You saved it." He turned toward the guests, voice booming. "Ladies and gentlemen, that," he pointed at Maria, "is why I invest in talent. Because brilliance can't be taught. It's born." The applause swelled again, thunderous and genuine. But from the observation deck, Ethan Rowe's expression never changed. He clapped once, twice, a hollow sound, before leaning close to one of his colleagues. "She tampered with the data," he said quietly. "Probably wanted it to fail so she could play the hero. Smart move for an intern trying to make headlines." The colleague frowned. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet," Ethan replied, smiling faintly. "But I will." Later that evening, after the hangar had emptied and the press had gone home, Marcus stood in his office overlooking the facility. The city lights glimmered in the distance. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, still processing what had happened. Claire entered quietly. "The reports are coming in. Investors are thrilled. We've already had calls from Boeing and Airbus asking about the eco-drive." Marcus nodded absently. "Good. And Maria?" "She's still in the lab, running diagnostics. She won't leave until she's sure it's safe." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Of course she won't." Claire hesitated. "Ethan seems unsettled." Marcus's eyes narrowed. He should be. His systems let that failure through. And yet, Maria was the one who fixed it. "Do you think it was sabotage?" He didn't answer immediately. "I think," he said finally, "that someone underestimated her." Down in the lab, Maria sat alone before the glowing console. The engine was quiet now, its metal surface cooling under dim lights. The data logs confirmed what she already knew. Someone had tampered with the calibration before the test. The offset was deliberate. Her hands tightened into fists. She could guess who had done it, but without proof, she'd only make enemies by speaking out. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. "Proud of you, my brilliant girl." The news reached Jamaica. "The whole market stopped to watch you fix that engine. You made us all proud." Maria smiled softly, tears threatening to fall. She typed back, "Thanks, Mama. I just did what needed to be done." She looked around the silent lab, her reflection glimmering faintly in the steel. The same people who doubted her had just witnessed her greatest victory, but even in triumph, she felt the unease of someone being watched. She exhaled slowly. "If they're coming for me," she whispered, "they'd better come prepared." The morning after the demonstration, Maria woke to the sound of her phone vibrating endlessly on the nightstand. For a few moments, she thought it was a dream, until she saw the flood of messages. Her name was everywhere. The girl who gambled with a jet engine. Freeman in turn risks lives for fame. Hero or hoax? Each headline hit like a physical blow. She scrolled through photos of herself at the test, her hands on the console, sweat on her forehead, fear in her eyes. But the captions twisted the truth. Maria Bennett overrides safety system without authorization. Freeman Aerospace under scrutiny. Her stomach turned. The internet had crowned her both savior and villain overnight, and inside Freeman Aerospace, the board had already chosen a side. By mid-morning, Maria stood in the glass-walled conference room at the top of Freeman Tower. Outside, the Dallas skyline gleamed in the sun, uncaring. Inside, the air was cold and sharp. A panel of executives sat across from her, faces grave. Marcus Freeman was there, silent, his expression unreadable. Next to him sat Ethan Rowe, the CETO, his hands folded neatly, his calm mask betraying nothing of the storm he had set in motion. Claire hovered by the window, concern etched in her features. The head of corporate compliance, a tall man in a gray suit, began the meeting. "Miss Bennett, we appreciate your presence. You're aware of the allegations regarding yesterday's prototype test?" Maria nodded, her voice barely steady. "Yes, sir. But I don't understand what I'm being accused of. I saved that test." Ethan's voice slid into the air like oil. "You also bypassed 4 safety protocols, accessed restricted systems, and modified calibration data during a live demonstration, without authorization. That's reckless and possibly criminal." "That's not true," Maria said quickly. "The data was already altered before I touched the system. Someone— Do you have proof of that?" Ethan interrupted smoothly. Maria hesitated. The logs were corrupted during the override sequence. She hadn't had time to extract them before the system reset. Ethan's faint smile widened. "I thought so." Marcus finally spoke, his tone calm but heavy. "Miss Bennett, the board must conduct an internal review. Until then, you're suspended from all lab access." The words hit her harder than any accusation. "Suspended?" "It's not punishment," he said softly. "It's procedure." "But sir—" Marcus raised a hand gently. "Go home, Maria. Let us handle this." Her throat tightened. "Do you believe I did it?" He didn't answer. That silence was worse than betrayal. She left the building through the service exit to avoid reporters. Cameras still swarmed the front gates, shouting her name. She kept her head down, clutching her bag like a shield as she hurried to the bus stop. The wind was hot and dry, carrying the faint smell of exhaust and asphalt. By the time she reached her small off-campus apartment, her legs felt like lead. She dropped her bag and collapsed onto the couch. The same news segment played on loop across multiple channels. Clips of the engine test, Marcus's speech, and then a reporter's voice. Sources inside Freeman Aerospace claim the young engineer intentionally altered the prototype's safety parameters to create drama during the live demo. Company officials have yet to confirm or deny. Maria turned off the TV. The silence was deafening. Her phone buzzed again. Messages from classmates, old friends, even strangers. Some congratulated her, others accused her of risking lives for attention. She tossed the phone aside and buried her face in her hands. For the first time in years, she felt completely powerless. Meanwhile, in his office, Marcus Freeman sat alone, staring out at the skyline. The board's emergency session had ended an hour ago. They had demanded swift action, citing brand integrity and shareholder confidence. Suspending Maria had been the only way to buy time. Claire entered quietly, closing the door behind her. "She's devastated, Marcus." "I know." His voice was low, tired. "She didn't do it." Marcus turned from the window. "I want to believe that." "Then prove it," Claire said firmly. "You saw her in the hangar, Marcus. She saved that engine because she understood it better than any of us. Someone tampered with that system, and I'll bet my job it wasn't her." Marcus rubbed his temples. "If I investigate behind the board's back and I'm wrong, it'll cost us both." Claire crossed her arms. "And if you're right?" He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Pull the event logs from the prototype system. Quietly. Don't use the main server." "On it," she said, already reaching for her tablet. 2 nights later, the truth surfaced. Claire stood in Marcus's office, exhaustion and triumph in her eyes. "I found it," she said, dropping a small drive onto his desk. The calibration data was modified 3 hours before the demonstration by Ethan Rowe's access credentials. He changed the thermal coefficients manually. Marcus's expression darkened. "You're certain?" "Positive." He tried to erase the logs, but the system still recorded metadata timestamps. For a moment, Marcus said nothing. Then, with quiet fury, he exhaled. He wanted her to fail. Claire nodded. And he almost succeeded. Marcus picked up the drive, weighing it in his hand like a weapon. "Not anymore." By morning, the internal review had reversed its findings. The official statement, delivered to the press, cleared Maria Bennett of wrongdoing and reinstated her position. But the damage had already been done. She sat at her small kitchen table when the email arrived. Her hands shook as she read the words. Subject: Reinstatement, Freeman Aerospace effective immediately. Your suspension has been lifted. The company apologizes for the misunderstanding and welcomes you back to your position. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Relief mingled with bitterness. "Welcome back," she whispered. Like nothing happened. A knock sounded at her door. It was Claire. She looked tired but relieved. "You're cleared. Marcus wanted me to tell you personally." Maria nodded slowly. "He knows. This. He believed you all along, even if he couldn't show it." Maria's throat tightened. "Thank you, Claire." Claire hesitated. "Ethan's furious. They're keeping it internal for now, but he's been stripped of project oversight. Just be careful, Maria." Maria gave a faint, tired smile. "I'll survive." When she returned to Freeman Aerospace the next day, the halls felt different. Colleagues whispered as she walked past, some smiling apologetically, others avoiding her eyes. Her workstation had been cleaned, her files reorganized, her name reinstated on the team roster. But she could still feel the shadow of the scandal lingering behind every polite nod. Ethan's office door was slightly open as she passed. He was inside, sitting behind his desk, expression cold as steel. Their eyes met. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "You survived the storm." Maria paused. "I didn't just survive it," she said quietly. "I learned how it works." He smirked. Be careful what you learn. Knowledge makes enemies. Then I guess I'll be ready. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hall. That night, Maria stood outside the Freeman Tower, looking up at the illuminated company logo against the dark sky. For the first time, she saw the place for what it truly was, a world of brilliance and ambition, but also of rivalry and greed. She pulled out her phone and called home. Her mother's voice answered, warm and weary. Baby girl? I'm okay, Mama, Maria said softly. They tried to bring me down, but I'm still standing. Of course you are, Patricia replied with quiet pride. You're my daughter. You were born to fight with grace. Maria smiled through tears. I learned that from you. She hung up and looked back at the building one more time. The reflection of the city lights shimmered across its glass surface, beautiful, deceptive, and full of opportunity. She knew now that genius wasn't enough. In this world, courage had to live not just in the hands that built machines, but in the heart that refused to break. And Maria Bennett's heart, once fragile, now burned with something stronger than fear. Determination. The first sunlight of spring spilled across the skyline, glinting off the mirrored face of Freeman Tower. Inside, the atmosphere was charged, not with tension this time, but renewal. 3 weeks had passed since Maria's reinstatement, and in that short time, the tides had shifted. The official statement clearing her name had been picked up by every major outlet in the industry. Freeman Engineer vindicated. Maria Bennett's genius redefines green aviation. From scandal to spotlight, the Jamaican mind behind the eco-drive. The same tabloids that once branded her reckless now called her revolutionary. But Maria had no time for praise. The upcoming Global Aerospace Expo in Houston was days away, and Marcus had chosen her, not the PR team, not a senior engineer, to represent Freeman Aerospace before hundreds of investors and innovators. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, and another test she could not afford to fail. In the presentation suite overlooking downtown Dallas, Maria stood before a holographic display of the EcoDrive hybrid engine. She rehearsed her speech as Claire adjusted the lighting. Waste not, want not, Maria said, gesturing toward the glowing model. That's the philosophy behind the EcoDrive, turning thermal loss into forward motion. Claire smiled. Perfect delivery. Confident but grounded. Marcus will love it. Maria exhaled, rolling her shoulders. I still can't believe he's trusting me to lead this presentation. You've earned it, Claire said. And besides, Marcus knows this project better than anyone else. It's his company, but it's your idea. Maria looked down at her hands, calloused from long hours of work. Sometimes I still feel like that janitor sweeping hangars. Claire chuckled. Don't ever lose that humility, Maria. It's what keeps you human in a room full of egos. Before Maria could reply, a voice from the doorway interrupted. I see my father's favorite engineer is ready for the big leagues. Maria turned. A tall man in a tailored gray suit leaned casually against the doorframe, his blue eyes, sharp, but softened by curiosity, fixed on her. Ryan Freeman, Claire said with a smile. Welcome back to Dallas. Good to be home, he replied before extending a hand toward Maria. And you must be the legend I keep hearing about. Maria blinked, taken aback. Legend is a strong word. I just fixed an engine. Ryan's smile widened. So did the Wright brothers. She laughed, genuinely for the first time in days. I think they had slightly more credit to their names. Give it time, Ryan said, eyes glinting. Marcus's son was everything his father wasn't. Charming, easygoing, and quick with words. But behind the casual tone was a mind clearly trained in strategy. Maria recognized it instantly, the same quiet calculation she used when diagnosing engines. I'll see you both in Houston, Ryan said, straightening his jacket. Try not to make the rest of us look too unprepared. As he left, Claire shot Maria a knowing look. Careful. That smile of his is a weapon. Maria blushed, rolling her eyes. He's just being polite. Claire arched a brow. He's a Freeman. Polite is how they flirt. The Global Aerospace Expo was a world unto itself. Polished floors reflecting the glow of LED displays, towering models of engines and drones, and the low hum of conversations in half a dozen languages. Banners hung overhead, emblazoned with the logos of giants: Boeing, Airbus, Lockheed. And among them, Freeman Aerospace, its exhibit front and center. Maria stood backstage, palms slightly damp despite her steady breathing. Beyond the curtain, hundreds of investors, journalists, and executives waited for the keynote presentation. Marcus approached, his expression calm but his eyes proud. You ready? Maria nodded. As I'll ever be. He studied her a moment longer. Remember, they'll expect perfection. But perfection isn't what they'll remember. Passion is. Maria smiled faintly. You sound like Claire. She's smarter than I am, Marcus said, allowing a rare grin. Then, softer, you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who believed engines were just another way of touching the sky. Maria's heart tightened. Your wife. Marcus nodded. She would have liked you. The announcement echoed across the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, representing Freeman Aerospace, Maria Bennett. The lights dimmed. The curtain rose. Maria stepped onto the stage. For a heartbeat, all she could see was the glare of the spotlight. Then the sea of faces came into view. Investors, reporters, executives. She took a breath, her voice calm, measured, and confident. Good afternoon, she began. I was once told that engines speak their own language. You just have to listen. A ripple of quiet amusement spread through the audience. She continued, walking slowly toward the holographic projection of the EcoDrive engine. The aviation industry burns over 90 billion gallons of fuel a year. For decades, we've tried to reduce waste, but the answer was always in plain sight. Our engines were talking to us. We just weren't listening. Her presentation flowed seamlessly, numbers, visuals, live simulations. She explained how the EcoDrive converted residual heat into usable energy, reducing fuel consumption and emissions. When she finished, there was a pause. Then the applause hit like thunder. From the front row, Ryan Freeman rose to his feet first, clapping with genuine enthusiasm. Marcus followed, his eyes glistening faintly. Maria's knees almost buckled from relief. Reporters swarmed afterward, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. She smiled, answered questions with composure, and shook hands until her fingers ached. When the crowd finally thinned, Ryan appeared beside her with 2 bottles of water. You were brilliant, he said simply. You just sold out every future investor meeting we have for the next year. She laughed, taking the bottle. I'll take that as a compliment. It was one, he said, leaning against the display table. I spent the last 6 months in London listening to people drone on about innovation. You walk in here and actually mean it. Maria looked at him curiously. And what about you? What do you do at Freeman? Ryan grinned. Officially, I'm a business strategist. Unofficially, I try to convince my father I'm not useless. I doubt he thinks that, Maria said softly. Ryan's smile faded a little. He compares everyone to her, my mother. Brilliant, fearless, impossible to replace. He looked at her, almost wistful. You remind him of her. That's why he trusts you. Maria's cheeks flushed. I don't know how to respond to that. Just keep being yourself, Ryan said. The rest will figure itself out. That night, at the Expo's private reception, Maria stood on the balcony overlooking the glittering Houston skyline. She finally had a moment to breathe. The evening air was cool against her skin, carrying the faint sound of laughter and clinking glasses from the ballroom below. Ryan joined her quietly, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "To the woman who made engines beautiful again," he said, offering her one. Maria shook her head. "I don't drink." "Then to the woman who knows when to say no," he said with a grin, taking a sip himself. She laughed softly. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," he replied. "My father told me you were brilliant." He forgot to mention impossible to ignore. Maria looked away, uncomfortable. "People will talk, Ryan." "Let them," he said lightly. "They'll talk no matter what you do." She turned to face him, her voice gentle but firm. "You don't understand. I work too hard to be taken seriously. I can't risk that for misunderstandings." Ryan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. But just so you know, respect isn't a misunderstanding." Before she could reply, Marcus appeared at the doorway. He didn't say a word, just watched the 2 of them for a moment, a small, knowing smile crossing his face. Later, as Ryan escorted her out of the venue, Marcus remained behind on the balcony. The moonlight caught his silver hair as he whispered to himself, "She has your courage, Claire." And his heart might just need it. The flash of cameras filled the grand atrium of Freeman Tower, their strobe lights bouncing off the glass ceiling like tiny bursts of lightning. Reporters jostled for position, microphones raised high as the room buzzed with anticipation. At the center of it all stood Marcus Freeman, poised behind the podium, his expression calm but proud. Beside him, Maria Bennett tried to steady her breathing. Her reflection glimmered faintly in the polished floor, poised, elegant, composed, but inside, her heart thundered like an idling engine. Claire adjusted the mic before the conference began and whispered, "Just breathe, Maria. This one's for you." Maria nodded, her eyes flicking toward Marcus. He caught her gaze and gave a small, reassuring smile, the same one he had given her that first day in the hangar when she'd asked to fix his jet. Marcus stepped up to the microphone. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us." His voice carried with quiet command. "When I founded Freeman Aerospace, I wanted to build more than machines. I wanted to build bridges to opportunity, to innovation, to human potential. Today, we take that vision one step further." The room fell silent. He gestured toward Maria. "Some of you already know the story of Maria Bennett, a young woman from Jamaica who transformed not only how we see engineering, but how we see resilience. From a scholarship student to one of the brightest minds in our company, her story is proof that genius can come from anywhere if it's given a chance." Maria's throat tightened as applause broke out. Marcus continued, his tone warm but resolute. "In honor of that spirit, I'm proud to announce the launch of the Maria Bennett Aerospace Fellowship, a global initiative to fund underprivileged engineering students from developing nations. The fellowship will provide full scholarships, mentorship, and research opportunities for those who dare to dream as Maria once did." The applause grew louder, echoing through the atrium. Maria blinked back tears. She wasn't used to the attention. She was used to working in the background, her brilliance buried under humility. When Marcus turned to her, she instinctively stepped forward. The cameras clicked furiously. She began, her voice trembling. "I don't have fancy words. I'm just grateful. I grew up in Kingston, where opportunity wasn't something people handed you. It was something you chased until you couldn't run anymore. Mr. Freeman gave me a chance when no one else would. And now he's giving that same chance to others. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. The applause that followed was thunderous. Afterward, as reporters swarmed and congratulatory hands reached for her, Maria slipped out onto the balcony for air. The Dallas skyline stretched before her, sunlight glinting off every skyscraper. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth on her face. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. "You did great." "That's proud." "So am I." A smile tugged at her lips. For once, she allowed herself to just feel the victory. Not the pressure, not the fear of failure, but the genuine satisfaction of having changed something real. A week later, Maria sat by the window of a small Air Jamaica flight descending toward Kingston. The island stretched below her like an emerald wrapped in blue silk. After years away, home still had the power to make her heart ache with longing. When she stepped out of the terminal, the humid air embraced her like an old friend. The smell of roasted corn and diesel, the sound of laughter, the call of vendors. It was chaos and comfort all at once. She hired a taxi, watching the familiar streets blur past. The houses were smaller than she remembered, but the colors, bright turquoise, coral, and yellow, were just as alive. Her mother's house sat at the end of a narrow lane, its faded blue paint peeling, bougainvillea spilling over the fence. Maria paid the driver and stepped out. "Maria?" a neighbor called from across the street. "Look how you shine, girl." Maria laughed. "It's just the Texas sun following me home." Inside, the small living room smelled of coffee and the sea breeze. Her mother, Patricia, sat by the window, thinner but smiling, a shawl draped around her shoulders. "Look at you," Patricia said softly as Maria knelt beside her. "My baby, all grown up and changing the world." Maria held her mother's hand, tears threatening to spill. "I just fixed engines, Mama." Patricia chuckled. "Engines don't end up on television. You did more than fix them, you fixed our name." Maria's heart squeezed. "I did it for us. For you." They talked for hours, about Texas, about the fellowship, about the people who'd once doubted her. Patricia listened, pride glowing in her tired eyes. As night fell, the sounds of crickets filled the small house. Maria stood outside, gazing at the stars that seemed brighter than any city light. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who'd mopped hangar floors, counting coins to pay tuition. She whispered to the wind, "You made it, Maria. But don't forget why." The next morning, she walked to the small school she'd once attended. The teachers gathered around her, beaming. Old classmates brought their children just to meet her. "Miss Bennett," one little girl said shyly, tugging on her sleeve, "can girls really fix airplanes?" Maria smiled, kneeling. "Girls can fix anything, sweetheart." When she stood again, she felt something shift deep inside her, a renewed sense of purpose. Maybe success wasn't just about engines or titles. Maybe it was about lighting a path for others to follow. Her phone buzzed again. She answered, expecting a call from Claire. "Maria Bennett." Ryan's voice came through, bright and teasing. "I hope I'm not interrupting your homecoming parade." She laughed. "You're safe for now." "How's Dallas?" "Busy." The fellowship announcement went global. "We've been flooded with applications already." "That's incredible," she said. "That's not all." His tone shifted, softer, more deliberate. "My father made a decision this morning. He wanted me to be the one to tell you." Maria frowned. "Tell me what?" Ryan paused for dramatic effect. "Effective immediately, you're officially the head of innovation at Freeman Aerospace. The youngest in company history." Maria froze. "Ryan, you're joking." "Do I sound like I'm joking?" She covered her mouth with a trembling hand. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll come back soon," Ryan said gently. "Dad wants to announce it next week." "What?" "I'd like to be there too." Tears filled her eyes. "Tell him I'll be there." Tell him thank you for everything. Already did, Ryan said softly. He just smiled and said, she earned it. That evening, Maria sat with her mother on the porch. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and violet. Patricia squeezed her daughter's hand. You see, my child? You didn't just fix a jet. You fixed the story people told about us. Poor women, forgotten places. Now they'll remember your name. Maria smiled through tears. It's our name, Mama. Her mother leaned back, her voice tender. Then promise me this. Help others find their wings, the way you found yours. Maria looked out at the sea, the wind lifting her hair, the stars beginning to blink into life above the hills. She thought of the girls in classrooms across Jamaica, of the young minds in places the world forgot to look. She nodded slowly. I promise. And as the first fireflies drifted through the dusk, Maria Bennett realized something she had never truly grasped before. Success wasn't the sound of applause or the hum of a perfect engine. It was the echo of hope, spreading, multiplying, unstoppable. The morning light crept softly across the Freeman airfield runway, brushing the tarmac in streaks of gold. The air was still, crisp, expectant. Rows of press cameras glinted under the rising sun, their lenses all fixed on a single sleek figure of silver, the Gulfstream X, Freeman Aerospace's newest creation and the world's first commercial jet powered by a hybrid propulsion system. At the edge of the crowd stood Maria Bennett, now 30, her tailored navy suit catching the light, her ID badge gleaming with her new title, Head of Innovation, Freeman Aerospace. Her dark curls fluttered in the wind as she adjusted her headset and looked toward the aircraft that bore her mark. A year of tireless work had led to this moment. Her design, once a sketch in the margins of a notebook, was now humming quietly within that machine, ready to take flight. Marcus Freeman stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back, his expression proud but unreadable. His silver hair gleamed in the dawn light. On his other side stood Ryan Freeman, his sharp suit undone by an unbuttoned collar and his characteristic easy smile. Feels like déjà vu, Ryan said, glancing at Maria. She smirked. Except this time, no one's yelling at me to leave the hangar. Marcus chuckled softly. And this time, the world is watching. He wasn't wrong. Representatives from NASA, Boeing, Rolls-Royce, and every major aviation outlet had gathered for the Gulfstream XS maiden flight. Even the U.S. Secretary of Transportation was rumored to be watching live. Maria drew in a slow breath as the ground crew moved around the aircraft, completing final checks. The low hum of turbines filled the air. Somewhere deep in her chest, that same familiar pulse, the rhythm of machines, of motion, of purpose, answered back. When the time came for the press conference, Maria stepped up to the podium, her heels clicking softly against the platform. The microphones clustered around her like curious faces. She looked out over the sea of reporters and flashing cameras, her pulse steady. "Good morning," she began. "A year ago, Freeman Aerospace made a promise to make flight cleaner, smarter, and more sustainable. Today, we fulfill that promise." The crowd quieted, listening. "When I started this journey, I was just a student trying to pay her tuition. I didn't have a name anyone recognized. All I had was a belief that every problem, no matter how complex, has a pattern waiting to be understood." She paused, letting her words settle. "I'm often asked what inspired this design. And the truth is simple." She smiled, her eyes flicking briefly to Marcus. "All I ever asked for was a chance. He gave me one, and I built my future with it." The applause came instantly, warm, thunderous, genuine. Marcus bowed his head slightly, emotion flickering across his face. Ryan was grinning outright, clapping louder than anyone else. When the crowd quieted, Maria continued, her voice softer now. This isn't just about technology. It's about faith, in people, in potential, in second chances. The EcoDrive system isn't only my work, it's the work of everyone who believed when belief wasn't easy. As she stepped back from the podium, Claire approached with a gentle smile and handed her a headset. They're ready for ignition. The airfield stilled. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Maria, Marcus, and Ryan stood side by side behind the safety line as the ground crew gave the final thumbs up. The pilot's voice came through the intercom, steady, excited. Freeman Tower, this is Gulfstream-X, preparing for first official launch. Marcus's eyes gleamed. Proceed. The turbines began to spin, a low, steady hum that rose in pitch and power. The sound wasn't harsh, it was harmonious, balanced. The result of years of design, testing, and failure reborn into success. Maria watched every second, every flicker of the data feed on the monitor. The numbers climbed, temperature stable, thrust optimal, efficiency perfect. Engaging hybrid system, the pilot announced. There was a moment's pause, and then the Gulfstream-X came alive. The engine's tone deepened, smoother, cleaner, the roar tempered by precision. The press erupted in applause as the aircraft began its slow roll down the runway. Maria's breath caught as it lifted from the ground, wheels leaving Earth, slicing into the morning sky. It soared, catching the dawn, the sunlight reflecting off its polished wings. The hybrid propulsion hummed flawlessly, the sound distinct, a whisper of power rather than a shout. Marcus exhaled, awe softening his usually stoic features. Beautiful, he murmured. Ryan grinned. She flies. Maria could barely speak. She soars. As the jet arced over the horizon, disappearing into the soft orange of morning, the crowd broke into cheers. Journalists called out her name, photographers jostled for the perfect shot, but Maria barely noticed. Marcus turned to her, his voice low enough that only she could hear. You didn't just fix my engine, Maria. She looked up, eyes glistening. He smiled, the kind of smile that came once in a lifetime, grateful, proud, human. You fixed my faith. Maria's throat tightened. I think we fixed it together. He chuckled softly, nodding. Maybe so. Ryan stepped forward, clapping a hand on her shoulder. So, what's next, genius? She laughed, brushing away a tear. Next? I think I finally take that vacation I've been promising myself. Make it Jamaica, Marcus said with a grin. The fellowship's first class is launching there next month. They'd love to see their inspiration. Maria smiled, her gaze lifting to the sky where the Gulfstream-X still glimmered faintly. Then Jamaica it is. An hour later, as the crowd dispersed and the jet returned to land, Maria lingered at the edge of the runway. The air smelled of fuel, sunlight, and possibility. The same place where her story had begun. The hangar, the challenge, the disbelief, now stood as proof of everything she'd overcome. She could still hear her mother's voice from that porch in Kingston. You didn't just fix a jet, child. You fixed our name. And maybe that was true. But standing there, watching the sky stretch endlessly above her, Maria realized she'd fixed something even greater, herself. No longer the girl who begged for a chance. No longer the intern doubted for her background or her accent. She was now a builder of futures, a voice for those who dreamed without permission. The Gulfstream-X touched down gracefully, its landing gear kissing the runway like a promise kept. Reporters rushed forward again, eager for final words, but Maria didn't step back to the podium. She didn't need to. Her story was already written in the sky. As the sun climbed higher, Marcus and Ryan joined her at the edge of the airstrip. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The jet's engines cooled behind them, the sound fading into a peaceful hum. Ryan broke the silence first. You know, if you ever decide to start your own company, you'll make my father lose sleep. Maria smiled. Don't tempt me. Marcus laughed. If she does, I'll invest first. They stood there, three silhouettes against the brightening sky. Mentor, Air, and the young woman who had changed everything. The jet's hum faded completely, replaced by birdsong and the distant applause of a crowd that still lingered in awe. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, letting it all wash over her. The wind, the warmth, the peace. Then she looked upward one final time. The sky stretched wide and unending, painted in gold and blue. It belonged to no one. But in that instant, it felt like it belonged to her. Months later, a new mural appeared on the wall of Freeman Tower's Innovation Wing. Maria Bennett standing beside the Gulfstream X, her hand resting on the engine she'd designed. Beneath it, engraved in silver letters, were her words. All I ever asked for was a chance. He gave me one, and I built my future with it. And above that, almost invisible in the shimmer of sunlight, a single line written in Marcus Freeman's handwriting. She didn't just fix an engine. She reminded us how to dream. The hum of engines in the distance carried her story forward, into the skies, into history, into forever.
Thank you so much for staying with us till the very end of this incredible story. Maria Bennett's journey from a struggling Jamaican student to the genius who changed global aviation reminds us of one timeless truth. A single chance can change everything. All she asked for was an opportunity, and through courage, humility, and brilliance, she built not just her own future, but a legacy that would inspire generations. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with your friends and loved ones. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories of hope, perseverance, and transformation from around the world. And remember, every dream matters, no matter where it starts. We'll be posting another inspiring story tomorrow, so make sure you've hit that notification bell to stay updated. Before you go, take a look at the video now showing on your screen. It's another powerful story that I know you'll love just as much. Thank you for watching Tales of an Observer. Until next time, stay inspired, stay hopeful, and never stop believing in the power of your own story.